So I watched this Jay Dyer debate. Heated Jay Dyer exchange. Jay Dyer versus Derek of Mythvision podcast. It was pretty interesting, pretty entertaining. Truthfully, Jay Dyer did come in a little hot. You know, I watched a lot of the preamble to that. Derek had been on that channel for about 2 hours at least. He was on for a long time. I only watched about 2 hours. But for the most part, it was him with the other ortho bros. And it was a pretty normal, pretty amicable conversation. They were asking him questions about, asking him questions, but it wasn't really a debate. It wasn't very heated. And Jay Dyer came on and he started trying to really press Derek on what is the criteria by which he establishes that which he is asserting. Now, it underscores one of the things. The only thing Jay Dyer did, I'm not opposed to Christians being a little bit rough and tough with the atheists. God knows they have no problem being rough and tough with us. Okay? I'm not. Jay Dyer could have dialed it down a little, but that's not what I'm opposed to. The only thing he should have done is that at some point in this little exchange, Derek literally said at least twice, okay, hey man, I'm not a philosopher. This is just philosophy. He didn't even know what the laws of logic were. Honestly, he didn't. Okay, so at that point, you put the sword down, you stand down. I'm not opposed to being tough with atheists, but if it's not in their general lexicon, if it's out of their pay grade, it's not stuff they know about, there's no point in continuing. There's a physicist, Carlo Rovelli. He could come on my channel and we could start debating about physics. He could very easily get outside the area of anything I'd have anything intelligent to say about. Starts talking about Hilbert space and vectors, and I'd be like, oh, sounds interesting, Carlo. There'd be no point in debating me. Why? Because I wouldn't really know what he's talking about. And that was somewhat clear with Derek. He didn't even know what the laws of logic were. So at that point, you should slow down, put your sword down, and just try to unpack for him what Jay Dyer was trying to establish. Now, what it did underscore, though, and this is something I've been talking about a lot, in a fully realized apologetic, whether you become a presuppositional apologetic or not, in a fully realized comprehensive apologetic, there should be some examination of the paradigm of reality of the atheist. Why? Because they are bringing an entirely different set of assumptions to the table. They're bringing an entirely different worldview. Atheism is not a worldview. I know it's not. I'll explain what a worldview is in a second. They're bringing an entirely different paradigm of reality to the table, and it colors everything they think and perceive. So what is a worldview? A worldview is a network of assumptions, often very deeply layered assumptions deep inside of you, involving metaphysics, epistemology, your epistemology, and your ethics and values that are non-negotiable. Why are they non-negotiable? Because they're not on the table for discussion. They're really, really powerful and resolute. That's why they have to be addressed prior to bringing any evidence to the table. Why? Because there's no point otherwise. They're really powerful. The problem with assumptions, okay, is one, they're really powerful. They color your view of reality all the time, and you often don't know you have it. So, for example, with an atheist, a huge assumption that they're bringing to the table often is the supernatural does not occur. Now, that's a really strong and resolute one in a lot of atheists. And I used to wonder why they sometimes fall for these gimmicky arguments that don't really amount to much so quickly. Because if your presupposition is the supernatural does not occur, okay, then you don't need to work very hard to rule it out. So in other words, I heard Matt Dillahunty bring this up, this week, a couple days ago when I was watching a stream with him. He mentioned a Ouija board. There's some sort of gimmicky out that I've heard Pine Creek mention for a Ouija board too. It's called the ideometer response. What it is, it's some sort of possible explanation or a way to explain away the phenomena that you have involuntary muscle movements that you don't even know about, and you start moving collectively. It's possible that it explains. With them, it was good enough. Why? Because they start out with the presupposition the supernatural does not occur. So they're just looking for the out. They're looking for the thing. Oh, here you go. Here's a potential natural explanation. Oh, okay, cool. Dismissed. They do that automatically. Why? Because the supernatural doesn't occur, dummy. Didn't you get the memo? And it's really, really powerful in people, and they don't recognize, rarely. Sometimes they're conscious of it. For example, I've mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. On Nathan's channel once, Camille Greger, who's a guy who comes on often to talk about resurrection, evidences for the resurrection, atheist, said literally these words. I've had at least 5 experiences in my life. I guess I made him kind of English or Scottish. He's Czechoslovakian, I think. It's 5 experiences in my life that I would easily qualify as supernatural if I believed in the supernatural. You see what the issue is? If I believed in the supernatural. So you're trying to present evidences to people. Basically, it's like you're approaching it from 2 different planets. One of you lives in a planet where the supernatural occurs, and one of you lives in this planet where the supernatural does not occur. And unless you attack or get at that presupposition, that starting point, unless you do something to weaken their resolve or get them to question their assumptions, there's no point in presenting any evidence at all. They've literally put it in the category of what? Extraordinary! Your claim is extraordinary, Craig! No, it's not. Is it really? Yeah, it is. Give me some extraordinary evidence. They're literally telling you got to blow their mind with your evidence because it's outside of the realm of what they consider possible. Does that make sense? It's really important, actually. I'm starting to become convinced it's extraordinarily important. For example, did everybody watch Paula and Shannon Q? They did the stream on Gary Habermas. Gary Habermas is like the evidentiary apologist. He did this magnum opus on the facts that lead to the resurrection, evidences for the resurrection. Okay, they started going through them. I watched about 40 minutes of. Eventually I gave up and said, there's no point in watching this. Why? They weren't working very hard to not believe in the resurrection based on the stuff that was being presented. They really weren't. They went through it piece by piece. I kid you not. And they weren't being dishonest. They weren't being challenged by it. Why? Because the supernatural does not occur. Resurrections don't happen, Craig. Don't you know anything? Did you get the memo? Resurrections don't happen, duh. That's where the starting point. So they start going through each of his evidences piece by piece. Jesus died on the cross. They're both like, okay, we can live with that one. Then it's like at least 10 people claim to have seen him after the death, I think was number 2. And I think they whittled it down to 2. I think Paul G only accepted that two claimed to have seen him. Regardless, the point is they really weren't working very hard to not believe in the resurrection. Why? Because they started out not believing in the miraculous power of God at all. It's like, I don't work very hard to believe in the resurrection. Same reason. Why? Because I start out believing in a supernatural being. And that I pointed out in other videos, when I pray about mundane, down-to-earth things, I am actually, if I say, God, let me give a good presentation today, I don't have any presentations that I'm doing, but if I'm praying about mundane, everyday, down-to-earth things, the example I used in the past, you're late for work. God, please don't let my boss arrive before me. That would be a prayer that almost every Christian might have prayed, okay? You would be enacting vastly just as much supernatural power to do that as to resurrect somebody from the dead. The idea that people get resurrected from the dead is outlandish, extraordinary in our world if you think that it's only natural processes. But the idea that an almighty, all-powerful being could resurrect someone from the dead isn't that hard to believe. That's the paradigm. You're believing an all-powerful being could resurrect someone from the dead. Is that hard to believe? No. You understand what I said? I didn't say that correct. I didn't say that all that clearly, but I think you get the point. They are starting out with an assumption. And the problem with assumptions, not only they're resolute and they're very deep and they're not actually what's being discussed, it's why it's so hard to have conversations across different paradigms of reality. Why? Because they color everything you think and believe. They even color your value system. And they're really important and they're really deep-seated. And here's the kicker. You don't know you have them. You don't know that you have them. Now, Paulogia might know that he has them because he's a counter-apologist and he's in this space. So he may be a little self-conscious about the fact that he assumes the supernatural doesn't occur. But most atheists wouldn't go, I assume, Craig, the supernatural doesn't occur. They just go, the supernatural doesn't happen, Craig. Don't you know anything? What, are you stupid? You think people resurrect from the dead? Are you crazy? That's why they think it's irrational. What? Because it doesn't happen in their paradigm of reality prior to engaging with anything you're going to present. You have to get at their resolve first. You have to weaken their resolve. You have to get at their presuppositions prior to engaging, or you're never going to get anywhere. You're never going to get anywhere. Why? Because they're just going to dismiss the things you present out of hand. Paula G and Shannon weren't working very hard to not believe in the resurrection, I promise. They weren't cracking a sweat, right? Because they started out not believing in the supernatural at all. So the bar to get them to move the needle is really, really high. It wasn't even close to reach. They'll tell you, extraordinary claim, extraordinary evidence. First of all, I would sincerely doubt there's any such category as extraordinary evidence. Evidence is part of the fabric of reality itself, or it doesn't really count as evidence. So by definition, it's almost never going to be extraordinary. The first time I got fear of God, I'll tell you the truth. Extraordinary claim, extraordinary evidence. No, not really. I went to Italy, okay? I'd been wrestling with the existence of God because I'd been in AA recovery, AANA. You know, some of you may know that it's a spiritual-based program, and they, you know, some of the 12 steps, God is right in the 12 steps. So that was the first time I'd ever started to move away from agnosticism. I was starting to wrestle with the potential reality of does God exist and think about it a lot. We go to Italy, my family, and we bring along my cousin Janine, who's Italian Catholic, from a working class Italian, working class Irish roots. I really got along with her really well. We're sitting down. She's very similar to me and my mom. We had, you know, a great time together. We drink and talk philosophy all night, talk for hours. Really got along with her. Find out that she's a Catholic, and as I start to find out over drinks with her, she's a really, really committed Catholic. It freaked me out. I was like, extraordinary claim, extraordinary evidence. No, not really. And it's a working class Italian is a really committed Catholic. It's pretty normal, right? It's pretty run-of-the-mill. My working class Italian cousin from a working class Italian, working class Irish family is really, really committed Catholic. That's extraordinary. No, not really. It's pretty normal. That's what I'm saying. But it really freaked me out at the time. I remember literally thinking, what, is God following me out to Italy? I can't escape from God? Like, it really freaked me out. It gave me fear of God for the first time in my life. Wasn't extraordinary at all. It was pretty normal. So the idea that there's some sort of exaggerated character of evidence that you got to wait for in order to properly adjudicate whether the supernatural happens or not is ludicrous. First of all, there's ample multitude of thousands of evidences of supernatural occurrences that are readily available and easily justified. The Ouija board is one. Go explore it for real. I don't even have to go look at any of the studies. Why? Because I can tell you point blank from just what we know right here at this hearing. A Ouija board is a mainstream product that is sold in a store. Okay, if it didn't work, if it was some gimmicky thing that you could easily write off and dismiss, it wouldn't sell. The word would have gotten out a long time ago and nobody ever bought it. As it is, you can go, it's marketed by, I think, Hasbro, and it's a mainstream product. And I've never played with one myself, but everybody I've ever talked to who has tried it said, you should try it, Craig. Oh my God, it freaked me the freak out. That's the only thing I've ever heard. The only testimony I've ever heard about is, wow, it was really weird. Wow, it really freaked me out. I think even Steve McRae had an experience with one. The only testimony I've ever heard about it by people I trusted immediately, why? Because I could tell they were telling me the truth, is obvious, was, wow, that thing really weirded me out. So if you, the atheist, sit down and try it, it's going to freak you the freak out and you're not going to be able to explain it. I guarantee you that's what's going to happen. And the gimmicky, oh, it's idolater, doesn't explain it at all. That's a gimmicky out. Oh, I can dismiss all this. Why? Because here's a potentially natural explanation. That's what atheists try to do. And their potentially natural explanations don't make any sense. They're really gimmicky outs, and they think they can dismiss the whole category. Why? Because they already dismissed the whole category prior to ever engaging with it. When Pine Creek asked me questions about my religious experience, okay, he decided 5 years before he ever met me that there's no way I could be telling him the truth. And it showed in what he asked me. He didn't ask me any questions. He asked me 3 times questions on my religious experience. Never asked me a single question. He was only trying to establish for me and for his audience that I was deluding myself. It didn't actually happen. He didn't ask me any questions. Well, I didn't think he had to. Again, 5 years before he ever met me, he decided what? The supernatural doesn't occur. And he decided it really resolutely. And if you don't get at the presuppositions of the atheist, there is no point in presenting anything. Why? Because it's not in their paradigm of reality. They inhabit a different planet. We're on different planets. Now, one of the other things I've said, and this thing with Derek and Jay may have started to expose the truth of what I'm getting at. There are philosophical arguments coming down the pike. Now, keep this in mind. Okay, Jay came in a little hot. And I think, I forget if I mentioned this. One thing Derek did that Jay should put the sword down, okay? Derek said at least twice in the exchange, twice that I remember, may have been more, hey man, I'm not a philosopher. Okay, at that point, I'm not opposed to getting tough with atheists. God knows they get rough and tough with us, okay? Everyone saw, Andrew Wilson was in the background. Everyone saw when Matt Dillahunty left to debate with Andrew Wilson. I mean, are you kidding me? I get a notification every single week. I get notifications of Matt Dillahunty. You know how the algorithm works, right? If you watch one Matt Dillahunty video, they send them to you all the time. I actually like it because they send me a lot of stuff that I'm interested in. But I watch at least one or two of his call-in shows every single week. Half the time he bullies and abuses people way worse than Andrew. He's 50 times more aggressive than Andrew. Usually he's a thug. This one said heated exchange. It wasn't a heated exchange at all. Matt Dillon was just being an abusive thug. It wasn't a heated exchange. The Christian was being really normal and just trying to present stuff. And Matt Dillahunty was just like, oh my God. He runs scams on people. I swear to God, he runs scams so he can amp up how annoyed and how impatient he gets. Because he uses it for effect. I promise you he's doing it. Whether it's conscious or not, I know he's doing it. Street tactics. Because there's a delay. He did it to me a couple times. There's a delay. So it happens every single time. And every single time it happens where the person starts talking, Matt Dillon has a cap. Oh my God, are you going to let me talk? And every time he knows it's a delay. So he's ginning that up in himself on purpose. Why? So he can be abusive, bully thug. Said heated exchange. It wasn't heated exchange at all. Matt Dillahunty was just being abusive. So he runs out on Andrew because Andrew came in a little too hot. Jay Dyer was a little too hot. I'd say, let's say they were at 15, dial it back 2 notches, it would have been fine. Andrew Wilson, maybe he shouldn't have said something that Matt Dillahunty took himself, something like trans people are deluded lunatics or something. Maybe, okay, he shouldn't have said that. That's not a good way to start a dialogue. Okay, fine. So he came in a little too hot. But the idea that Matt Dillahunty now gets to run out on him is ridiculous. Matt Dillahunty's 50 times worse every single week. 50 times more aggressive every single week. So, come on. Have spare me. You sensitive little flower, Matt Dillahunty. Give me a freaking break. You're a Fabergé egg. We got to dance around your emotions because you're too delicate. It wasn't Shannon who does go, bend over backwards to be polite and nice to people, who left and said, this guy's too aggressive, I can't handle it. It was Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty abuses people half the time. He gets away with it. Why? Because he spins it around, makes it look like the person's generally driving him crazy when they're not. He's just being a thug. They're not. That's what I said. He twists it. He makes it look like the person's actually getting on his last nerve. And you don't really realize when you're watching it in real time that there's no reason for him to be upset at all. He's just being a jerk. I swear to God, that's what happens. It's not like Shannon. Okay, if Shannon said this guy's a little too much and he's being too aggressive and left, I'd take it seriously. Why? Because she works really hard to be nice to people. Dillahunty doesn't. So he runs out as Andrew's too aggressive? Are you joking? You little crybaby. You could dish it out all day long. You can't take it a little? Come on. Get real. So get real. So no, I have no problem with atheists or Christians being a little bit tough with the atheists. Dial it back 2 notches and it's fine. Andrew Wilson dialed it back 2 notches and he's pitch perfect. Right? I wouldn't have said the trans people are lunatics thing. I wouldn't have said that. You lost the trans vote at that point. They're like, oh, I don't like this guy. Trans vote. Okay, so you lost them. But most of the stuff he was saying were regular arguments. It was perfectly legit. Matt Dillon should have left. It was ridiculous. It was absurd. Roll my eyes all day long. Couldn't get my eyes back out of the back of my head. Anyways, so moving right along. Now, the well-placed argument. So Derek tapped out. Okay, start with Derek tapped out. He said twice, hey man, I'm not a philosopher. Okay, at that point, you let him off the hook, put your sword down. It's that simple. There's no point in going on past that point. He didn't even know the laws of logic. So he really doesn't know philosophy. He didn't even know the laws of logic. That's pretty basic. So there's no point in having a philosophical conversation. You should stand down at that point and try to, tease out what exactly Jay Dyer was trying to accomplish. Now, I've told you, arguments coming down the pike, and they're based off of presuppositional apologetics, which basically sources back to Kant, and it basically sources back to, it goes further than that, but I'm just keeping this general. What are your justifications for knowledge claims? It's really important. It's really important. There's no point in presenting evidence without doing some groundwork on, let's get at your assumptions first. Why? Because atheists are bringing to the table just like everybody else. And if you don't start teasing them out and seeing if those presuppositions are justified, you're never going to get anywhere. And as I said, there are arguments coming down the pike that heavily favor the theist, that atheists are going to struggle to handle. Why? Because I don't think they can be handled. Now, little later on, I don't know if it was the same stream. I'll give you the perfect example. I'll prove it to you. Okay, a little later on, it was a different stream, but it was Jim Bob's channel. Jim Bob and Andrew Wilson were on with two atheists who are philosophers, or at least can handle philosophy. One was Theophilus. You guys might know him. He's pretty cool. I've interacted with Little. He's kind of a quantum physics guy. Now he's most notable. He goes on modern day debate and debates as a Marxist. But my experience with him, we would talk about quantum mechanics. And I think he's actually relatively smart. I think he's on the same page with me. He believes in relational quantum mechanics, Carlo Rovelli's. I'm pretty sure he does. So he's definitely within you can have a philosophical conversation with some other guy was on the channel with him that I didn't know, but he's being really aggressive with Andrew Wilson. He was trying to tell him where to go and insulting him and stuff. Okay, so those two guys, you can be as tough as you want. Why? Because they both think they're smart, and Theophilus is kind of intelligent, and they're perfectly capable of handling a philosophical conversation. And this is literally what started to go down. Now, had those guys gone full Jay Dyer and started getting aggressive with them, it would have been perfect. Would have been perfect. They would have wrecked them, to tell you the God's honest truth. Why? Because this is how it started. They were talking about something like basic rights, human rights. You've heard me talk about that before. Why? Because that's a really good transcendental category to bring up. It's almost impossible to justify as an atheist. That's why. So they start talking about basic rights, and both of them are laughing at Andrew Wilson. He goes, well, so then you think it's a fiction? The guy goes, no, it's a social construct, so you think it's fictional. And they're like, ha, 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 you're so dumb. This guy's so dumb. No, that's exactly what that means, guys. And then Theophilus starts going, it's physical. Basic rights are a physical thing. And then some cockamamie, absolutely absurd premise. No, they're not. They're transcendental, immaterial, transcendent, other than matter and motion. And why is this a good argument? Because it's literally almost impossible to justify as a reductive materialist, which both of those two probably are. I know for a fact Theophilus is. You start saying everything was physical. These aren't physical. Remember the insight from Hume. This was what Jay was getting at with Derek too. You cannot derive an ought from an is. What does that mean? There's the transcendent immaterial can be applied to any abstract object, any transcendent category. It isn't just values and ethics. Any abstract object cannot be located in the empirical facts. Why? Because it isn't found there. It doesn't reduce to physical properties. Period. You start to present that argument to atheists and watch them fall apart. Why? Because it's literally almost impossible to justify. Especially if they're willing to bite the bullet and say, I'm a reductive materialist. Remember the Richard Dawkins, the famous Richard Dawkins. I'm going to hammer away at this. Remember this one. He said, what did he say? I dance to the music of my DNA. There is no good, there is no evil, only blind, pitiless indifference. Why is that so famous? Because it's 100% consistent with atheism. 100% consistent with atheism. So then you challenge him like this. But that doesn't line up with the world as it actually occurs. Which means what? Which means there's a discrepancy there. A problem of justification for who? For the atheist. To keep it simple, I'm going to keep it to reductive materialist. Now, I brought this up in another video. I don't know if I posted at this point. But this is a really good way to understand what I'm talking about. I'll give you two arguments, okay? Basically, what did I tell you? A well-placed argument. Did I say this already in this video? Is like a trap. It's a box. That's also why you don't have to get aggressive with people. Jay could have toned down. Sometimes Jay's aggressiveness gets him into trouble. There was a debate between him and T-Jump that he could have won easily if he just relaxed and let T-Jump make his points. And then tell him why the points were invalid. But he kept interrupting. He kept trying to, you don't know philosophy. You don't know philosophy. And he was basically right on the substance of a lot of what he was going to argue. I've only watched the first 20 minutes recently. I saw it a long time ago. I hated it. It was a terrible debate. Because Jay Dyer could have easily won that debate if he just slowed down and not tried to win by brr. Sometimes the ortho bros try to win by brr, manly man. Shouldn't. Quality of your argumentation, the quality of your argumentation alone. Tone it down. You don't have to be manly man. You don't. You don't have to be. I'm a tough guy. I don't even try to be. What? I kick your ass. You look at me like that. Ow! I told you. Ow! What'd you hit me in the face for? Just shut the F up, dude. Want to get knocked out? You want to get knocked out? You want some more? No, you don't have to be manly man. Why? Because the well-placed, well-constructed argument is a trap. The well-placed, well-constructed argument is a trap. There's no getting out of it. And there's really easy to ferret out philosophical justifications. Now, I'm not talking about for a belief in God. So hear that clearly if you're an atheist. Relax. I didn't say belief in God. I'm not going there yet. I will eventually, but I'm not going there yet. Why? Because I want to keep this simple. It is easy to ferret out well-crafted arguments against reductive materialism. Just start there. Why? Because it's easy to do. So, for example, Ron and I were talking, in one of my last videos, I put an argument about a necessary precondition of a civil society is transcendent morality and concepts like basic human rights. Okay, basic human rights is what? A universal ought. Remember what I told you, insight from Hume. Memorize that insight. Think about it a lot. Why? Because it's very revealing and it will help you. You cannot derive an ought from an is. That applies to a universal ought too. So there's no way to justify an ought or a universal ought according to materialism. Why? Because it doesn't reduce to material properties at all. It is transcendent and immaterial. Cannot be empirically verified for. Why? Because there is no spatial temporal locality to put in a Bunsen burner. It has no physical properties. This becomes really hard to justify given atheism. And if you construct the argument correctly, you trap the atheist before he even starts the argument. I'll prove it to you. I was talking with Ron in the comment section of a video where I mentioned that argument. And Ron started talking about universal oughts. Smartest guy in town, atheist, I'm the smartest atheist in town, rolls up on us to tell me where to go. I'm going to destroy you, Craig. Yeah, I bet. I can't wait. Yeah, I'm sure you will. Rolls up on me to destroy me. Tells me, ha, 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 laughing at you the whole time, laughing my ass off. I'm a naturalist and a reductive materialist. There's no such thing as universal oughts. You know what I said to him? Congratulations, genius. You just proved the point of my argument in the video. Do you believe in basic human rights? Then he starts playing a game with me. Why? Because he knew he was trapped. He knew he was trapped. So he starts literally playing a game with me. Oh, it depends on what you mean by basic human rights. No, it doesn't depend on what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. You're not stupid. You just told me you're the smartest guy in town. Now I'm supposed to believe you're stupid? I don't. You know exactly what basic human rights are. Do you believe in them, yes or no? He's trapped. Why? Because if he says yes, okay, then he just told me they can't exist according to one of his paradigms of reality. I'm a reductive materialist and a naturalist. There's no such thing as universal oughts. That's a true statement. Remember what I told you about Richard Dawkins? 100% consistent with atheism. Blind, pitiless indifference. There's no such thing as a universal ought in a world of blind, pitiless indifference, correct? If matter and motion is all there is absolutely no way to justify a universal ought. Correct? But is the precondition of a civil society. How so? Basic human rights. Okay, that's the one we were discussing. And that's the one they were about to discuss, Andrew Wilson and Theophilus. If you say they don't exist, then you can't have a civil society anywhere in the world. Why? Because they're a precondition of a civil society. You want to live in a country that doesn't guarantee your basic human rights? Do you? I don't. Nobody does. Why? Because they can do anything they want to you. You have no basic human rights. If it has ontological status, if that's actually a real thing, it's enshrined in our Declaration of Independence and grounded in God, mind you. That's not a coincidence. Why? Because you have to ground in God or it doesn't exist. It isn't intrinsic. We believe these truths to what? Be self-evident. Each one is guaranteed by their creator with right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Basic human rights. So I asked the atheist point blank, and he was trapped and he knew it. That's why he tried to pretend he didn't know what I meant by the concept. When I knew clearly he does. Remember, he rolled up on me. I'm the smartest guy in town, Craig. Sure, we'll see. We'll see. I doubt it. We'll see. It's how they always roll up on you. I'm the smartest guy in town, Craig. Yeah, I bet. Until I prick your bubble and then you're gone. Then he knew he was trapped. Why? Because you can't hold to both at the same time. You can't be a reductive materialist and a naturalist because the first thing he said was 100% consistent with that and believe in universal oughts. One of them's got to go. And then when you ask you if you believe in basic human rights, you can't give that up. Why? Because then you can't account for the world as it actually occurs, as it actually is. Necessary precondition of a civil society. Did I say an optional precondition of a civil society? No. I said a necessary precondition. These are the linchpins of all these basket of philosophical arguments that are going to fall under general banner presuppositional apologetics. They are powerful. They are inarguable. Any atheists want to take me up on that? Find the flaw. Go for it. Don't just insult me in the comment section. We're going to insult you in the comment section, Greg. I just did that. I know that part already. I got that one down. You idiot. You don't know anything. You're so dumb. Okay, great. The argument, please. I just presented an argument. If you've got something to say about the argument because you're the smartest guy in town, debunk it. You can't. Why? Because it's a trap. Think about what is actually said. Think about what Richard Dawkins said. Blind, pitiless indifference. There is no good, there is no evil. That is 100% consistent with matter and motion is all there is, atheism. It's 100% consistent. Okay, now you have a big problem. How do you account for the world as it actually occurs? Where basic human rights is the precondition of our civil society. And if you don't guarantee basic civil human rights, nobody wants to live in the country that you found. Okay, second argument. Just as powerful, but it helps to clarify. Okay, there is no hard problem with breakfast. Say what? There's no hard problem with breakfast. I kid you not. I think I said this in another video. I don't remember. It's a killer argument, though. Same premise. Just helps to explicate it. Same premise. The premise is always the same. It's a reductive materialist. Why? Because these things are not material. They are transcendent immaterial. Transcendent immaterial other than matter and motion. The best way to be consistent as an atheist is be anomalous. Try to argue that they don't exist. But then you have a problem. Why? Because they are necessary preconditions of intelligibility in many situations. You have to make use of them. Have to. Did I say want to? No, I said have to. Matt Dillahunty said he has two assumptions that he will own up to in a different video. Said, I assume the laws of logic because I have to use the laws of logic, and I assume the reality of the external world, both of which are assumptions that he goes with. Why? Because he has to. He didn't quite use these words, but they are necessary preconditions of intelligibility. He said, I'm forced to make a choice. If the bus is coming towards me, I have to believe in the reality of the external world. I'm forced to accept it or I die. And he said laws of logic. If I want to make arguments, if I want to be coherent, I have to hold to the laws of logic. In order to use the laws of logic, I have to assume them. This is 100% correct. 100% correct. Okay? So now let's go to, there is no hard problem with breakfast. Say what? There's no hard problem with breakfast. I kid you not. Okay, so ask me a question about breakfast. Where's breakfast? Right in front of my face. Why is there no hard problem? Because it is physical entities that easily reduce to physical properties. Where's breakfast again? Right in front of my face. It is comprised of eggs, juice, toast, bacon. Good breakfast, correct? Yeah, I understand. Okay, eggs, juice, toast, bacon. Easily reduces to physical properties. Now, ask me a different question. I'm sitting on the campus of Yale University. Ask me the same question. Where's Yale University? Trick question. Think about it for a second. Where is Yale University? You're sitting right on the campus. Technically, the real answer, everywhere and nowhere. Everywhere all around me, because that's Yale, and nowhere in particular. Why? Because it does not reduce to physical properties. Whatever Yale University is, can be accounted for ontologically. It is abstracted from the physical. It is an abstract entity. It does not reduce to physical properties. I'll prove it to you. So everywhere and nowhere is the right answer. Everywhere all around me, nowhere in particular. Okay, there's a building right in front of me. It says Yale University. If I take that building and sell it to Apple Computers, is it still Yale University? No. It is now owned by, it is now Apple Computers. Because it has nothing to do with the physical properties of the building that makes it Yale University. Correct? Correct. So what makes it Yale University? It's a complicated answer, but it can be answered metaphysically, philosophically, spiritually, potentially. Spiritually, ew. Yeah, I know. Ew. It's rough. Sit down. Metaphysically, the answer is metaphysical, spiritual, metaphysical, philosophical, potentially spiritual. It is not physical. If I take my egg back at the breakfast table and take my egg, sell it to my neighbor, it's still an egg? Yes. Why? Because it's an egg entirely and completely according to its physical properties. Right? Still an egg. Think of Yale University. I sell the building at Yale University, Apple Computers. It's no longer Apple Computers. Why? Because it's what it is not according to its physical properties. Its identity is not according. Now, one way to reconcile this is a reductive materialist. The only way that I know of, the only coherent metaphysic is nominalism. To say this thing exists in name only, it doesn't really exist. It is the answer of universals. They call it the problem of universals. The first problem of universals, philosophy, universals versus particulars, is where is something? Why is that the biggest problem, they say? Because where is something that has no spatial temporal locality? Real answer, everywhere and nowhere. Everywhere it gets made use of, nowhere in particular. Why? Because it has no spatial temporal locality. That's why they've been arguing for centuries that these things don't exist. Okay? And that is the only coherent metaphysic to a reductive materialist. Except it doesn't work. It's consistent, but it doesn't work. You're going to tell me Yale University doesn't exist? It does. Call up Yale University tomorrow, you get an answer on the other end. Hi, Yale University. Joe speaking. Hi, Yale University? Yeah, I just said that. Hallelujah, you exist. Yeah, hallelujah, weirdo. We've been here for, 200 years. You see? Doesn't reduce. It doesn't reduce to physical properties. So those are two arguments out of a basket. A basket. Those are two arguments out of 100 yet to be produced that heavily favor the theist. Why? Because there's literally almost no way to justify them given atheism. Literally, instead of atheism, I'll say reductive materials just to make it precise. Because there may be a way to justify given atheism, but you have to pick a different philosophical starting point. And very few atheists, as far as I know, almost no atheist has one. Why? Because it's generally not consistent with atheism, that's why. Again, go back to Richard Dawkins when he said, blind, pitiless indifference, there is no good, there is no evil, we dance to the music of our DNA. That is 100% consistent with atheism. The problem is it isn't consistent with the world as it actually occurs. And it isn't even consistent with Richard Dawkins' old value system, probably, at all. It isn't even consistent with all the other things that Richard Dawkins assents to and believes in, at all. That's the point. So there's a whole galaxy of arguments here that needs to be explored and brought out and brought to life. And then you'll see. Atheists going to start running for the hills. I told you, there's a smart set of atheists. A lot of people are going to be tapping out a la Derek. Hey man, I'm not a philosopher. Okay, it's fine. Sit this one out. This might be a little over your head or out of your pay grade. That's fine with me. Sit it out. We don't have to be jerks about it. Why? Because you just construct the argument correctly. There's, if you're a smart guy atheist, tell me how you can hold to a reductive materialist and universal basic human rights at the same time. You can't. I don't see how you can. They are irreconcilable, so one of them's got to give. If you give up reductive materialism, you're no longer a reductive materialist. And you've already assented to something that is, by both of our definitions, immaterial, transcendent, other than matter and motion. You see? You get it? So anyways, I'll wrap it up here. When they had Theophilus on, Andrew Wilson's going to start. The underling orthobros are going to start doing this right. That's my prediction. They're going to be in debates and they're going to start winning a lot of the debates. Why? Because they get it. They're not quite as good as it, but they do get it. And if you want to see Jay Dyer in a situation where the guy's philosophically adept and you see, the quality of his argumentation is usually very strong and easy to justify. Go watch him with Stéphane Malnier. Because Stéphane Malnier is, couldn't tap out because he does philosophy. And he was asking him a lot of questions and it was a really good discussion, but it underscores everything I'm talking about. It got to the point of a lot of this. So, there you have it, kids. Just a little, you can watch the Derek thing. The reason why we have to do this, it should be part of a comprehensive apologetic package. You can have a evidentiary apologetics, you can present some evidences, that's fine. But you should also have to do some examination of the presuppositions of the person who is in front of you. Why? Because what they assume is part of reality is going to color everything they see, taste, touch, smell, hear. All of their perceptions are colored by it, and it's really important. That's why. It's profound. That's why it's so hard to get along with people who have different presuppositions. Why? Because you basically live on different planets. You live on different planets. That's why. So, there you have it, kids. Just a quick little video. I guess I'll wrap it up. You can check out the Derek Jay Dyer thing, if you want to, you should watch Stephanie's analysis of it. Stephanie gets at the root of a lot of the questions. Actually, Stephanie's analysis is worth watching. It's very good. Gets at all the, it gets at a lot of the points, the philosophical points. The philosophical points are really what's relevant. And there's going to be a basket of arguments coming down the table based off of these paradigms, exploration of these essentials of philosophy and metaphysics that are going to start heavily favoring the theist. You know, you can try to answer it from Derek's point of view as an atheist and see what you would say to Jay Dyer in that situation. Were there ways that you could argue with him? I suppose so. It's all about justification for knowledge claims. How do you know what you know? What are the necessary preconditions of intelligibility? What are the things that must be the case in order for you to account for the world as it actually occurs? What are the things that must be the case? What do we have to acknowledge? We've already got a starting point with Matt Dillahunty where we can properly adjudicate this. He's acknowledged at least two assumptions that he holds to. Laws of logic, okay, and the reality of the external world. Why does he hold to both of those assumptions? Because he has to. His own words. I added necessary precondition of intelligibility, but as he explained it, it was what? Necessary precondition of intelligibility. So there's others that we can add to his thing. Basic human rights we can add to Matt Dillahunty. Why? Because he's a humanist. Humanist is a value system. He was trying to say that you can't trust your intuitions. Okay, his entire worldview, as pertains to humanism, is justified through what? Intuitions. They weren't empirically verified for. His entire paradigm of reality as pertains to humanism is found through what? Intuitions. So you'll see. You'll see. I'll leave it off here, but there are arguments coming down the pike. You know, just keep your eye on the ortho bros, right? Because they're going to start winning debates. And winning debates with atheists is going to radically shift how this, I assume if they keep going the way they're going, they're going to start winning a lot of debates. And winning debates with atheists is going to radically shift gears. Because people don't get it till they see it in action. That's why. So, there you have it, kids. That's all for now. Mass has ended. Go in peace. Amen.